Good afternoon. My name is Ed Leszynski. I'm Investigator badge number 380 and also Operations Director for Special Solutions Ltd. Private Investigations in Chicago, Illinois. Some of you may have seen my previous videos relating to electronic harassment. This one is a standalone video that I wanted to do specifically on the subject of implants. So many of you out there have already contacted us regarding this particular subject. Implants, much like electronic harassment or any of the other esoteric things that I've talked about today, are absolutely real. They were actually first devised by the Soviet Union and their counterintelligence service, the KGB, back in the late 60s. This was a technology that we actually inherited, much like we did rocket technology and the designs for our highways and everything else from the Germans. This is no different. Now, implants in and of themselves are a reality. They may not be as widespread as some sensationalistic sites or blogs would have you believe, but they do exist. They are real. They are out there, and we have had some experience with them in the years that I've been here. Some of the implants are of the older variety. They're basically made of titanium, no larger than basically a grain of rice, and they do seem to be powered bioetherically. Now, what I mean by that is that they actually have figured out a way to tap into the power that is generated by your body and can actually use the power to ride it like a wave to keep transmitting. Now, the capabilities about these implants are arguable. Some people say that they can induce mind control or motor control over physical bodies. Some people say that they can actually communicate or draw thoughts out of people's minds. These are all things that are still up in the air for us. We don't have any conclusion about them. But one thing that we do know is that someone with an implant can be influenced through pain, basically, again, through nerve induction. This ability seems to be latent in the implants themselves. And as years have gone on, we have started to see some new varieties of these. Now, the original ones, as I mentioned previously, were titanium. They were small steel pellets, basically, that are powered by the body and would stay stationary, usually at a subdermal level, 1 or 2 inches below the top layer of skin, and usually in fatty tissue, the back of someone's foot, the back of their arm, basically in their back by their scapula, places where there aren't a lot of nerves, where you're not going to feel them, and where they basically wouldn't be easily detectable. But as time has gone on, we've seen several different varieties of them. As of most recently, within the last 2 years, I've come across several cases that have documented not just metal implants, but new ones, new models, porcelain ones. This basically makes it a little harder to detect them because they do not, even though they're still giving off a radio frequency that can be traced, they are absorbent to heat. So you can no longer use thermal cameras to find them. They're not made of metal, so you can no longer use metal detectors to locate them. They're a little more slippery. They seem to have some added capabilities, such as changing people's body temperature or inducing sleep or depriving sleep, messing with people's ability to eat, sometimes making them gorge eat. There's been a lot of disturbing trends with these new ones. Now, I've only come across 2 cases where the porcelain ones were actually removed from someone. Neither one of them were mine. They came to us through colleagues. But the fact that they were willing to share this data that they got from these new implants is basically the basis of the fact of why I'm talking to you today. I get a lot of calls, a lot of emails about people who think that they may have been, quote unquote, chipped or implanted. We have come across them in isolated cases over the years, but they are few and far between. I cannot lie about that. Now, sometimes people who believe that they've been implanted may be experiencing actual electronic harassment, some of the symptoms that I named in the other videos. But in the rarest of cases, they are absolutely correct. And during those times, that's when we do our best to find a MD, or a surgeon who is open-minded enough to actually entertain the idea that somebody has something foreign implanted in them that they never requested to be put there. There was a gentleman in Oklahoma who, for many years, some of you may know exactly what I'm talking about, whose name was Dr. Robert Leer. Dr. Leer was based in Oklahoma City, and he was very big in the TI community, but also in the UFO abduction community. Now, Dr. Leer documented more than 30 different varieties of implants that he had taken out over a 25-year career. Some of these implants looked like they may have been implanted by foreign agents. Some of them looked like they may have been manufactured and implanted by our own people here in the States. And in 2 cases, interestingly enough, he couldn't even identify the alloys they were made out of. So we don't know how they were made or where they come from. Mystery deepens, obviously. Now, there are a couple of solutions. If you are able to locate one in yourself, or you feel that you may have been implanted with one. First step is to basically get a body scan. Okay, medically this is always a good idea, but we found in some cases that MRIs, CAT scans, they do seem to miss them from time to time. Sometimes they find them, sometimes they don't. The only way that we've been able to successfully trace any kind of implant within anyone at all is through radiofrequency. And in order to utilize that, we come back to our old friend, the triple axis radiofrequency meter. This basically reads frequency signals coming from 3 different directions, above, east, and west, basically. This is a device that will allow us to not just locate the implant, but to also figure out what kind of transmission it's operating at, what frequencies it's operating at, possibly be even able to jam it or interfere with it until such time as an MD can extract it from the person. We've been successful in several of these cases and have followed that protocol without fail, and it does seem to work. Now, if we do end up finding an implant in you, there are a couple of protocols that we could follow. Basically, most people don't know this, but law enforcement agencies, if they find surreptitious surveillance devices of any sort, are obligated under the law to pursue an investigation of it. Now, obviously, depending on where you live and the quality of the police that you have there will affect that, of course. The second option is if we do find it and we get it removed for you, then we can trace it for you and find out where it came from, where it was manufactured, who bought it. Because the one thing about these particular devices is that they are highly regulated. They are used primarily by intelligence agencies. We've seen them, on plenty of nature shows, chasing whales, wolves, horses, you name it. So if animals can be tripped, so can we. We are just intelligent animals. That's all we are. So, basically to say that, it's far-fetched and it couldn't possibly be is, frankly, to me, closed-minded. I mentioned before in one of the earlier videos that half the things that exist today they only existed in comic books when I was a kid. So, you can't put your finger on anything and say it'll never be, because the capabilities of the human mind are limitless. If you can think of it, it is possible, period. And that's how, that's the philosophy I've always lived my life with. So it keeps me open-minded. It keeps me from getting skeptical about things. Implants is a subject that a lot of people, especially in law enforcement and in the medical community, are extremely skeptical about. Even the ones who are sympathetic and know that this phenomena exists are hesitant to talk about it because of ostracism they will receive from their fellows in their community. And it may cost them, as it did with one doctor who I associated with a few years back, it may cost them their practice, it may cost them their license, it may cost them their job and their living. So obviously they're hesitant to talk about it in an open forum, many of them are. Dr. John Hall, who I mentioned in an earlier video, is an exception to that. He is actually going around trying to get other MDs to come forward and admit that, that there is plausibility to these phenomena. He's been moderately successful, as have we, when it comes to law enforcement or state prosecution agencies. Now, if you do feel that there is an implant, or if you've been in a situation where you think one might have been put into you, the best thing to do is to give us a direct call. We can perform what we call a body scan or body sweep on you physically using about 12 different pieces of radio equipment, some of which you see here. These are devices that will allow me to not just track down the signal, but also to figure out within an inch or two its location within the body itself. That basically serves as a roadmap once we write the report for the MD that we can refer to, send a referral letter to actually trace this thing and track it down and pull it out of you, ending the problem. hopefully. That's at least that's usually how it goes. So basically, at this point, what we would need to do in order to do that, it can be done discreetly and performed just about anywhere. The only thing is that if we're doing a body scan, it's much like if you're doing a bug sweep. You have to turn off all the Wi-Fi, all the cell phones, all the surreptitious smart devices that you may have, smart dishwasher, smart TV, things like that, so that we're not getting false positives, and so you can do an actual scan. Basically, at that point, we can usually schedule within a week to either come out to you and perform it, or you can come to our facility here in Chicago, where we can perform it in a office that's been Faradayed and completely proofed from outside signal and outside surveillance. Being in the business this long, since '91, of technical surveillance countermeasures, we've taken our precautions so that basically nobody can be listening in, and it will remain completely discreet between us and you, much like when you go to see a lawyer. So if that does happen to be the case, what you'd want to do is you'd want to contact either myself, Edward Leszynski, or our founder and chief investigator, Mr. John Frysek. He's the one who got me on this path, and now we're galloping down together to try and figure out what the problem is here and the best way to solve it. But we have come across them in people before. They are rarer than you would think, but they do exist. They do happen. So I don't want anybody out there to think that we're being skeptical about it, because we're not. I've held them in my own hands. I've talked to researchers who have gone over them, and I got to tell you, it's a very disturbing, very perplexing development, because here we are. But basically what you'd want to do is you'd want to give us a call at 773-775-7600. Be happy to answer any questions you have, and if you'd like to make arrangements to have a scan done or a sweep done, I can definitely accommodate you, as I do have everybody's schedule in hand. Once again, my name is Edward Leszynski, Investigator badge number 380 with Special Solutions Private Investigations in Chicago. Thank you so much for your attention and your time, and I look forward to hearing all of your questions and answering all of them to the best of my ability. You have yourselves a great day in the meantime.